to Cloud and Clear, the podcast by SADA for innovative business leaders and technology enthusiasts, where we explore how Google Cloud is transforming the industry and what that means to you. Now here's your host, Tony Safoian.
Well, it's my great pleasure to have a super special guest today with me on Cloud and Clear, and a very special welcome to Patty Vollmar, who is the Worldwide Director of Global Collaboration and Workplace Services at Colgate-Palmolive. Welcome, Patty.
Thank you, Tony. It's really good to be here with you.
So happy to have you on. The story of not only your career, but also I think Colgate's journey is something that I know the audience will be super excited to learn more about. But before we dive into Colgate-Palmolive and our history together, I'd love to learn more about your background and how you came into this position. You didn't have this exact role when we first met, and I think that's great. Sort of your great work's being appreciated, as I can see. But you didn't start there either. So what's your story?
And so, when people have been with a company for a long time, right, you always gauge like how you talk about it. And so I will say I'm an experienced professional. And so, yeah, I mean, I've been with Colgate for quite a while, and the majority of my career, and it started out in supply chain. Actually, it started out in operations. So I was in a U.S. company, very, American-based, forecasting, planning, running the Colgate toothpaste for U.S. company. And that was a very domestic role, right, for several years, like in Park Avenue, and then moved to a semi-global role in import and export as Colgate supply chain started strategically sourcing their goods for the Colgate world. Then I left to have a kid, and I jumped into an IT role, right? IT when IT was, starting to need people that could help manage projects and interpret needs from the business into IT requirements, et cetera. So I started running big projects like, and this is when it became really global, and my love for just global collaboration and insights and expertise from around the world just really exploded, because there's so much good out there, and there's so many people with excellent ideas. Global projects like harnessing spend of indirect procurement for the whole world in every country. And, as you know, Colgate's got, I guess the official word is over 200 countries and territories around the world with 1,000 employees. And so, yeah. And then, I kept kind of working my way around IT and ended up in different procurement and supply chain roles. And in collaboration, one of the largest projects, as you know, that we were really successful with was the G Suite from some on-prem collaboration to cloud. It was our first really big step into the cloud.
Yeah, I think this explains a lot actually about how you've always had an affinity for the needs of the line of business. Like where you came from. I think it's just very telling.
It's you can't do, if you don't align with business, how would you perform well for the company, right? So I think I would say that I think Colgate in general, especially IT, right, I think has melded itself really well into just being one with the business. I mean, we don't like using words like us and them. It's, we partner very well, and we're all in it for the strategic needs of the company. And so whatever we can bring to the organization is what we do. So.
Yeah, I know we could tell in working with you and your team how there was not a lot of us and them at all. It was really very much a continuum, and the way that you prioritize parts of the project along the way, it was very much about the needs of the business, but also the global needs. And I love how you brought that up, because it was the first time that we were involved in a project that had such a big and spread out global footprint.
Yeah.
And we love, learning about, the cultural differences, time zone differences.
Oh yeah. Right.
But also the market differences. And it was just great. I remember taking calls where we were all on, and then Micro was in India or somewhere, and like time zones didn't matter. It was just about getting the projects done.
Yeah. It's culture and it's privacy, right? Data privacy we had to deal with, and Google did a nice job at that. Languages, right? How did you create all of your change management so people could understand it and really get it? Yeah. Luckily, a lot of it was, the migration of like the mail and calendar stuff was pretty intuitive, right? So it wasn't a lot of learning there, but some of the other stuff you needed to translate a lot.
So I think what's really relevant and timely right now is how Colgate-Palmolive, in the midst of this global pandemic, running such a large business. Again, I want to echo that it's, the organization's existed for 200 years plus.
Oh yeah, I think it's like 214. I had to look it up just to be sure I was right.
214 years.
Crazy.
And in a lot of ways, very forward thinking, right? And I imagine some of that has definitely served to your benefit in the midst of the biggest challenge I think any of us have seen technologically, economically, culturally, this sort of pandemic that we're living through. It seems like forever, but maybe month 4. So do you want to talk about that experience? Because I think what I've read in the public sort of sphere has been really remarkable, but I love to hear, and I know the audience wants to hear from the inside, how was this whole transition? What was it like?
I'll just begin by saying I think that, the leadership at our company several years ago, when you just get involved with the cloud, it's unsure, right? You're not positive. So I think this was a decision we made several years ago to really go cloud in something that touches every employee for the most part in a very personal way, right? I mean, you're touching these tools every day, multiple times a day. You get used to using it and it becomes productive for you. And any change could be considered a big change, right? So this was a deal, but because we did this years ago and felt really good about it, it was pretty steeped in our culture. We were really well set up for, and I would say globally, right? I mean, because we do really well setting global standards and making changes where we have to, right? But because it's global, it scales. And, and it's funny because in the US, we tend to be very, COVID sent us home on March 13th. Well, that was in, the New York, New Jersey area of the United States. This is where we're located. But, the whole world, across the world had been dealing with this since, December, January. And I would say the whole time, people were going remote and going remote and going remote. And, of course, personally, you were impacted, right? And I think as everyone was, but I think that the technology of, pretty much everyone having a mobile, PC of some kind, right? Whether a Chromebook or a laptop or whatever, they could go home and plug in. And, I would say, so it was changed because it was full time. But I think, maybe some of the biggest issues were I'm not used to being at home and there's lots of people at home, right? It wasn't, I can't get on, my system. People got their mail. They checked their calendar. Yeah. I think we had more meetings than ever, right? I mean, I think because of the platform we were on, people just started talking more because I think, Colgate's a very caring company as well, right? They pride in their people first. You wouldn't make it without the people that care so much, right? So it was very much the first, I can't even estimate, time is a blur at some point there, right? But it's like, get in touch with your people. Is everyone okay? How's your family? You can look at their face. Pretty much we tried to have video as like a standard, but it was all very easy to connect with people because it's one click, right? And we got ourselves to the point where, we think that Google Meet is a really great standard because you can go on your phone, you can have it on your PC and it's one click, right? So even in the offices, I think, we're broaching that let's just keep it easy, right? Whatever that means, if we go back to offices full time. Yeah. But it was a lot of communication, probably over communication in some cases, right? To the point where we're like, we're fine, really stop worrying about it.
No, I think what I appreciate in our customers and also ourselves going through this at SADA is some kind of preconceived notion around when this goes back to normal or theories about what normal is.
What even that is, right?
It's like, let's not wait for whenever we think that's going to change back to whatever we think it's going to look like. Let's assume this is the current mode of operation. So then how do we not only execute on the business objectives, but create new ways to stay connected, slightly new ways of working. Again, being on G Suite for several years, it's actually not that different, which is a blessing. But there's things you just do differently by virtue of everyone being remote. And so how have you managed the cultural aspect within your teams? specifically, because I think there's no bigger test of our culture as a company than what's going on right now. And I think this is where, people as leaders and organizations either show up really well or they fall down. And I think this is the biggest test we've ever seen in 20 years of existence at SADA.
It's, I mean, I think we've got a leadership team right now that, first of all, isn't afraid of technology, right? I mean, they embrace it, and, everybody's got their different levels of savviness, but they're not afraid of it, right? So as long as there's a good support system there, whatever you don't know can be either learned or improved. And so I think just because people are so open-minded right now, because this changes the whole game, right? How are you going to continue to be effective and motivational and inspiring and productive while being at your house on a screen? It's going to be something we're going to have to live with. I mean, yesterday is off the table, right? I mean, it's not the same thing. It's going to be a totally new game. But I think for our leadership and the people around the world, the tools we had at our disposal, it's funny because people are saying, wow, we started having all these town hall meetings. Why didn't we have them before? Because we could do it, in physical place, but sometimes the physical was almost a barrier, where now you've got people using, live stream to connect with thousands of people and do a Q&A on the side, and they're hearing from people and connecting. And so I don't know that we missed a communication beat at all. I think our whole environment continued to operate. We're talking about now the overload maybe of meetings, right? We're talking about how do you watch it? How do you not have people on? Because, now people are so tuned in because they want everything to go right. How do you shut off at the end of the day? So, we've got people watching to make sure we're being reasonable. We're not working too long after hours. But when you overlap in time zones, things like Google Docs, right? Or somebody in, I need somebody from Mumbai, right? Unfortunately, I might have to bother them when it's not, between 8 and 4, right? So I'll have a question doc. I can comment plus, somebody and they could respond, and they won't have to get onto a computer. They could do it from their phone, and they get an answer pretty quick. So it's just a really nice ecosystem. Yeah, we're lucky.
And I think the collaboration features in docs and sheets and presentations, the fact that the collaboration can happen asynchronously is also really nice, right? Because it doesn't require like, oh, I got to, get up now, respond to this phone call or ping or whatever. It's like, okay, I'm going to do a bunch of stuff. Sometimes you have to wake people up, sometimes you don't, but mostly you don't. What happens is like when they're back on it and have done their work, you come back and it's there.
Oh yeah.
And it's this flexibility of asynchronous collaboration and communication, and then real time.
And there's no doubt where it is, right? If you started working on this document, it's not like you're looking through. And I kind of feel like this is such a canned discussion, right? But maybe because we've been living it together, right? Like for so many years, but you're not looking through an inbox for the latest, whatever document did they remember to copy me? You've got it because there's only one file and it's there, and you can see comments and changes. So one thing it saved us, honestly, not everybody's awesome at it, right? You're going to delete stuff. I think I gave somebody a heart attack, a couple weeks ago, where I made a change I copied a slide, or at least I thought I copied a slide, and I totally removed their content. And they went in and kind of went, hey, does anybody know what happened to all my stuff? And I could go back in history and look at, like, I knew exactly the day and time I went in, made the change, and I could restore the whole, at least that slide, even restore this slide, and it was all back. Sorry, my fault. But so it's nice that, there's just a lot of checks and balances. And, we even, I think Colgate, in the spirit of productivity, right? Where, again, listen, so we're used to, at least in my world, if you're in an office, you're going from a meeting, you're moving to a meeting, you're spending the 5 minutes you might have had to walk to the next meeting. There's no bio breaks or snacks or coffee or whatever. Right? Now we're actually like, hey, I can use this time to just click, stop, and then, whatever, take a quick break. We started this thing called smart meetings, right? And I guess Google's got a setting as well for shorter meetings, right? So you leave 5 minutes in a half an hour, or 10 in an hour. And so what we try to do is set a meeting up where it's, it's pretty, like, you go into the meeting, here's the slides deck template that we're going to use. Here's the objective of the meeting. Here's the decision makers. Here's the content. And meanwhile, everyone's looking at that. And by the end, the person who's taking the notes already has the forward actions and agreements. You stop sharing, start sharing again, boom, it's on the screen, and you already know, kind of what people are doing next. So it's all good.
I think I think that story is literally in an ad that Google made around collaboration. It's like people are having a meeting, they're taking notes, assigning action items, and then someone at the end who's not used to that paradigm, they're like, all right, so we'll set a follow up for this meeting. It's like, no, it's done. Like we did it. We did it.
That's right. Yeah.
There's no follow-ups to action items and then to regroup. And no, it's just like, we did it. We all have to figure out together what this new normal looks like. But I think part of the silver lining I hope that we all get to extract is some of these habits and behavioral changes and cultural attributes and strategies, I think will be permanent changes. And I think that's actually good. We have to be able to take the good from what's happening right now. We have examples of daily executive stand-ups we didn't have before. We have also weekly town halls on Fridays we didn't have before. And you look back and you're like, oh, that's really good. Why were we not doing it before?
Pandemic for that to happen, right? You got to wonder. And it's, it's funny though, because I think, and everybody again has these challenges with the change management of people wanting to change or not wanting to change. I think the pandemic took the argument out of the equation. It was like, here's how it is. If you need to work, this is gonna help you the best. And it just became easy. So people that were maybe struggling a little bit just kind of went like, oh yeah, okay.
In our story, in the SADA story, we appropriately call this inflection point on the timeline. We call it our Colgate moment. I kid you not. It's called our Colgate moment. And that was the moment that Diane Green back in the days, won the deal at Colgate and then, implemented it successfully. And not that like you weren't the first big G Suite customer in the world, but it was like the highest profile, most ambitious, most globally distributed, but also we had the most in it team that we've ever worked with,
Right. Yeah.
Probably up until now, even I could say like that team, was, led by you, was like so into making this thing a resounding success. And so a lot of large organizations, traditional enterprises, look, when like Netflix or Facebook goes G Suite, it's like, okay, yeah, fine, born in the cloud, whatever, right? But when a 214-year-old organization does this, it's like the rest of the traditional enterprise looks at it like, how did they do it? And I mean, we've told the story many times in different forms, but from your perspective, what were the kind of reasons and expectations going in? What outcomes did you actually see relative to those expectations? And then I also want to talk about what you felt was the biggest challenge.
You use the word inflection point, right? I think that when we did this, right, our company was at a place where, we were eager to try cloud out, but we weren't quite sure what the right answer was. And we needed to make a change. And we did we did due diligence with a bunch of stuff, decided that Google was the way to go, right? And then after talking to people, it was, because all you can do is, make your best judgment, right? And talk to people that maybe have been through it, and some haven't, some haven't. Our team is really good at what we're invested in, right? And right. Colgate overall, right? I mean, with the focus, like anybody, with the focus, you're going to go and you're going to hit it, right? So I think, we were given a challenge, right, to do this fast. And some of the experience we got was, listen, and the longer it takes you, the more painful it's going to be for people along the road, right? So, I mean, you did a lot of, for us, and I could jump to pain points first. I mean, you had some infrastructure changes we had to make, right? Because there's different things you had to account for. And it's not just, US, it's US, and then all around the world, all the different requirements for privacy and, et cetera. But we converted in 6 months. When you look back, we talked about what would you change, right? So, I mean, we went from an on-prem service to migrated mail and calendar. Not years and years though, like maybe a year, I think, of each we migrated, right? And we went with a fresh Google Drive. I think at that point we didn't remove anything from anyone, so we weren't really hurting, right? We weren't, other than mail and calendar and IAM, right? The documents were, we were like, hey, listen, we want to do that. So the organization was like, hurry up. It wasn't because the culture, right? The graduates and the, early in career folks get it, right? They're used to it. and they'll do whatever, right? And it's, they're looking to their leaders to figure out, which way we should go. Do we use this or that tool? And so, they were like, oh, it's okay. We had more Google guides, right? That were all around the world. We're like, would you like to sign up to be a Google guide and help your partner? People are raising their hand. They were having cupcake parties when we went live with big D's on them and shirts. And it was a poll for a lot of people. And then, then you had to deal with, okay, well, what about my old stuff? And, everyone's still working through that, right? There's a lot of benefit to new stuff, but it's like, if I have to take my old stuff and move it, it's still a process, but it's happening. And I think people wanted the change, right? And I think a lot that came along with this was, it's not just a tool set, it's a feature, right? It's really like what are you going to get? And, and since then, I think we've gained confidence, right? We've gained, again, productivity from people that are all over the world collaborating on the same stuff and coming up with common, easy sharing, right? You're not reinventing stuff, you're taking it and reusing. There's just so many productivity benefits, but we're happy with the confidence because we're now expanding. And since then, we've done a ton of cloud stuff, but, infrastructure in the cloud and services in the cloud, just, I think once you get started, it's better.
How did the results after a few years now compare to the expectations?
Good question. Listen, I think, the obvious recent big win is just, you could go home and nothing changed, right? It's the same now, same docs. You can't, a lot of people, every once in a while, I'm like, what could I have heard, right? Oh, I left all my stuff in the office. Kind of didn't, because it's all in the cloud. It's, you hit a button and you got it all, right? Some important documents I've heard people still need to go back and get, but from a safety standpoint, you don't have to go back in because you have a device, or you have a device, and you just can get in. So I think from that standpoint, just the ease of continuance was super, super beneficial. But I think, did it hit our expectations? I think as time goes on, you'll see everyone collaborating, right? But you still have people that, are used to the stuff that they're used to, or old programs that require, know what I mean, older technology or different technology. So, maybe the thought of everybody being in one ecosystem, we're generally there, but there's outliers. And I think that that's okay. I think that
I agree. One of my biggest surprises on the early side, and I remember I came to your, I think it's Fifth Avenue office. Is it Fifth Avenue?
Manhattan? Oh, Park
Avenue. Sorry, I'm from Los Angeles. I don't know New York that well, but I came in and I met with Mike as well, and I saw a Chromebook on his desk, and that was his main device at that location, and he had a docking station with the monitors. And I was like, and then I walked into another room, and there was a bunch of them being prepped, Chromebooks for everyone. Not every, I don't know who the initial wave was, but I was like, wow, they're really, really in. And obviously there's a bunch of benefits, but I imagine, security, identity, those are really important aspects for an organization like Colgate-Palmolive, who has quite a bit of proprietary information, publicly traded. There's IP, there's all this stuff that having a very confident security posture probably also goes a long way for your users and for IT leadership.
For everyone, right? Today you can't be too secure, right? And we take that very seriously. I think that Google in general, right? That was a good selling point for that whole platform. But I think from the Chromebook standpoint, right? We've had good acceptance, but we still have so many things that you'd have to pay to virtualize right now that the virtualizer, it depends on the persona, right? So with the right person, if you're all browser based, you're in. Once you start adding all these differences, it's a little costly, but then that's just up to you to decide. But people love them. People love Chromebooks.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like, it's obviously I'm a little biased, but it's my third daily driver. And we just also deployed, NetSuite, which is web-based, ServiceNow, which is web-based. So we're basically there. But I was surprised that such a large organization that people, groups, including micro at the top of IT, are really adopting and pushing the paradigm.
What I would say too is, again, that could, probably what you saw was the prep for people, again, to try stuff out. Because I think we were prepping it for full C-suite. Right. And some are using it and some they're not. And that's okay. Right. But I think they were kind of like, I'll try it, right? So we were prepping and we handed them out. It was well received. And again, I think it was like, it depended on your personal preference because we weren't making anybody use a Chromebook, right? It was like, use it if you want to.
Exactly.
But, from a global standpoint, they're not everywhere. They're not available everywhere. So that was a
get
bit
them everywhere yet. Yeah.
We want to go big. And, we started again getting some hurdles. So, we'll see. I think in a couple of years, we'll try it again in a bigger way. But yeah.
So what do you think was the most challenging part of the project? Or where do you feel your best recollection where most of the energy went?
There were a couple of things, right? We had to figure out our infrastructure, right? Everybody was worried about bandwidth. I remember, right, for Google Hangouts meetings at the time. Right now it's Google Meet. That seemed to work out fine, but we had to do some work there, right? We had to rethink what we had, which was fine. We needed to go through that process. I remember the
way that internet was routed globally. Yeah, I think some of that had to be re-architected.
Off-ramps, right? And it was just something that we hadn't done. That's all. It was unknown. And so we just had to figure it out. And we were, we had a lot of good partners help us figure it out. And it worked. I think we all learned, right? But it helped set up for the future for sure. I would say the other thing too was I remember, I think I would do this different, right? I remember moving data, right? It was moving mail and moving calendar entries and moving meeting appointments and calendar room bookings and stuff. And, so it's that balance between, how do you make sure you don't miss a beat when you're on the other side of a migration, right? You want to make sure people have their information and maybe I would have throttled that a little bit more and maybe not as moved as much because we were really worried about our go live and what people would have available. And it ended up being completely fine. I mean, it's funny. I just looked back through my notes about, I recently had a service award, a breakfast, and they had asked me, what were key things you remember? And it was these funny things you remember from people that, during your years you worked with. And one of the key things I remember was with my team after going live, that the Monday, right? And this is, you're working 6 months. I don't know that many of us are families, right? It was just a lot of work, fun work, but important work and engaging, right? So you wanted to do it. We got to the Monday, we cut over on the weekend on Monday, 5:00. We're like, really? We can go home? Yeah. Like, wow, no kidding. We can go have dinner with the family. That's good. I mean, and so,
I think what the whole experience proved to the market is that no organization is too traditional. No organization is too big or too globally distributed to do this successfully. And I think that was such an important proof point because, you get into these engagements like we do today and you hear resistance of all sorts in the beginning. And a lot of it has to do with, well, we've always done it this other way. Our users are not, hip enough or whatever. Right. But I think Colgate demonstrated to us, to the market, to yourselves, I think that when you have that top-down leadership support, alignment with line of business, and a desire to truly transform both functionally and culturally, that absolutely it can be done and it can be a resounding success with challenges. Of course, there's always challenges. And there are some definitely, we've never seen this before, moments at Colgate because of how, complex and large the footprint was. But I'm so proud of it. And we still refer to it again as that Colgate moment for many reasons, because it was a market moving moment. It was like holy cow, it's almost like the first person to climb Everest. It's like we didn't think that was possible, and now after the first person makes it, 20 other people miraculously make it because they're like, oh, I get it. That person showed us that it's something that's possible to do. And I truly feel that way about the Colgate project to this day. And I really appreciate the ongoing engagement. I think that's the key too for us. And I think the value to customers in the cloud world is that all the incentive in the world exists to make sure that we stay engaged together, that we continue to add value. And as the platform evolves, we're helping you adopt more of it or more parts of it, over the long term.
Yeah, it's easy to take though, right? Because it's automatic, right? I mean, it's like one of the other compelling reasons is it just comes, right? And sometimes you're surprised at the new cool stuff. It's like, oh, hey, we knew that was coming, right? And then all of a sudden shows up and it's just right there.
So if you could predict, what do you think the next, like your biggest challenges, pandemic aside, as an organization, next 1, 2, 3 years, what do you see as you try to look into the horizon?
Oh, from this space, I mean, it's funny. Some of the things only because reality is you have to deal with this pandemic, right? And, hopefully next year we're looking at this going like, okay, thank God that's over, right? But I think it's going to change now for a while. And, so we met in person, we had some meetings. I mean, the team that you put on the Colgate team, I mean, we're still, I think we talked about this before, we're still in touch, right? All those original people from both your side and my side, I know all still talk.
Yeah.
And some of them have moved on and some of them are still with you. And it's just all really healthy. But that was relationship building, right? And I think when you talk to people in procurement, people in sales, people in learning, and people just in general, right? From you talk about a culture, how are you going to continue to build or explain what a culture feels like, right? So, the Colgate that I grew up in, very caring, very, supportive of their people, very ethical, very, that's just like who we are, right? And we tend to gather people that are like that, right? And so how do you, Colgate's a great name and you're going to work for this company. That's awesome. But how do you show the newcomers what that feels like? That would be how, from a collaboration tool standpoint, I would love to explore, right? And what tips and tricks do you use to reach out and let people just understand who you are, what you're all about? And I think that's where, with this whole, there's a lot of talk about, underserved populations, right? And people that don't have a large voice or people that aren't heard. And yes. I could go into so many examples of different, who that means. And just looking at someone, you wouldn't know that that's how they feel, right? So the level set the playing field a little bit, right? And you teach people how to act, right, on a screen, because now it's all, literally level.
Yeah.
You're here, you can be in my face or not, right? I mean, if you choose to be on video mute and on audio mute and just show up as a, big green K, then that's cool. That's what you're going to get, right? But I mean, if you want to show your face and engage, it's right there for you. So I think the dynamic of this is going to be really interesting, and people working remotely, right? All that stuff we used to do in person, which I love. I mean, I love it. But how are you going to do it, right? I mean, are you, my husband is in sales, right? So are you going to be able to bring someone to dinner? I don't know, so what does that become? And you're going to find ways. Our CDO team has found some really cool ways to have, like an energetic sales meeting, right? Where they have people with like, this one person came on, they were like the DJ. And it was so cool. And they just did like a whole hype session and it was cool. So, innovation is going to be killer here, I think, and how people do cool stuff.
Yeah, I think we're seeing the best of people. I think that it is so different in onboarding people and integrating them to your culture, who probably are a great expansion of your culture to begin with, because, they've been hired, right? Like birds of a feather, but integrating them to the value system and processes and all that stuff in a remote paradigm is so interesting. I'm really proud of how well we've done. And I know that's probably new for your management team and people operations teams as well. But I think as long as we figure that out and we're in a position that we can serve the community, create more diversity in our leadership pool and our young talent coming in, it definitely puts us in the best possible position to serve our customers.
Yeah. And what better way now, right? Because I mean, you can be anywhere on the box.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't have to, in my office, I don't have to pay a lot of money to fly you in. You're just here. Yeah. So the sky's the limit right now for a lot of people, right? That maybe it wasn't before, which is cool.
And like you, I love being in person. I remember flying out for like a 3-hour film session and flying back one time.
Oh, that's right. That was a lot of fun.
It's very different for me.
Just think about that, right? Think about the cost of that versus what we're doing now. I mean, it's I don't know. I hope we find as much pleasure in this next wave of culture and interaction, right? It's going to be very interesting.
Well, thank you so much for being our guest. We hope to be working with you for many, many years to come through your entire evolution and journey and all through the challenges and the peaks and the valleys. I think that's what makes the best kind of partnership for life. And again, thank you so much for being part of the SADA history, our story, the Google Cloud story. That Colgate moment was truly special, and hopefully we have more of those together in years to come.
Good. Thanks for the invitation.
Thanks, Patty.
Thank you for listening to Cloud and Clear. Check the show notes for links to this week's topics. And don't forget to connect with us on Twitter @CloudandClear and our website, sada.com. Be sure to rate and review the show on your favorite podcast app.